Welcome back to Franklin Covey's twice weekly podcast on leadership with Scott Miller. That's me. I'm your host each week, 6 years, nearly 400 episodes. Where on Tuesdays and Fridays, we curate what we hope are valuable, fascinating interviews with the top luminaries globally around all topics related to leadership, to make you a better leader, whether you are an entrepreneur, solopreneur, intrapreneur, perhaps you're a leader in an organization, you've got a side hustle going on, or maybe you're just leading your family and you're interested in becoming a more effective person. Our co-founder, Dr. Stephen R. Covey, of course, wrote the seminal book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. From that book and from our work in productivity, we've now become the world's most trusted leadership firm, and we hope that this podcast, twice weekly, invests in you to make you a better leader. We interview broad experts, academics, entrepreneurs, CEOs, titans, celebrities, sometimes people that aren't household names but have expertise on a particular topic. Today our guest is Rajeev Kapur. He is absolutely an expert on all things AI. In fact, he's recently written what is one of the world's best-selling books about AI, aptly titled AI Made Simple, a beginner's guide to generative intelligence. We invited Rajeev today because I think he has an uncanny ability to level set the conversation about what is present around AI, what should we know, where is it moving, how do our skills need to evolve. And so for you out there that may want to level set, upskill, upgrade your own knowledge around AI beyond just ChatGPT, I think you will find today's conversation riveting. Rajeev has a long history of entrepreneurship in tech, exited multiple companies, and continues to be at the forefront of all things tech-related, speaking, coaching, advising. Rajeev, welcome to On Leadership.
Thank you, my friend. It's a pleasure to be here. It's great with that opening that I feel like I'm a titan now. That's kind of cool.
Well, I think some would call you that, including me. I mean, obviously you've had a very strong background in the high-tech industry for decades, including stints at Dell and other recognizable companies. In fact, let's start there, Rajeev, because I think your multi-decade career as an entrepreneur, as an investor, advisor, and also as an employee and a leader in some of the nation's most forward-thinking tech companies has set you up well for, this is not your first book, but from what is right now your best-selling book on AI. Take a few minutes and rewind a few decades and just water ski across your history so people know how you've built this expertise that makes you the author of this top-selling book.
Well, thank you. First of all, my friend, it's great to be here with you again. You know, you and I have go back a couple of years now, and it's awesome to spend some time with you, and I'm excited for everybody here to listen to this. Look, my background, my experience, it goes back. It's funny. It's interesting. You know, when I graduated from university or from school, I got my first job was an internship that sent me to Paris in Australia. And it was a tech company. And that tech company made printer cartridges and things like that. And it was just stuff that, for HP printers and people, even a lot, young kids today would have no idea what I'm even talking about. But that led to the PC industry for me. And it led to me working for Gateway. You might remember Gateway 2000, the old company from the late 90s that had the early 90s, couch butter boxes, all those things. It was there for a couple of years, did really well there. I didn't like living in the cold, and so got recruited to Dell. I joined Dell in 93-ish, 94, and became one of Michael's first executive assistants, and that was amazing, and built a really strong relationship with him, and then worked my way up through Dell, and eventually lived overseas for Dell. I mean, before I moved overseas to China, I actually was running the West Coast for Dell. It was about $1.6 billion business. And then did China for a couple of years, and then Hong Kong, Singapore for a couple of years, all over the world, helping establish the Dell business. And then from there, got recruited to be president of an e-commerce company back here in Southern California, in the Orange County area where I live. And did that for a few years, and then went to an audio technology company that was doing things in kind of the AI space, but more on the machine learning side. Built that company up, that company sold. And then jumped over got recruited to join 1105, and 1105 is a B2B marketing and media technology services company. And we are at the forefront of data and analytics and cloud and all those things. And so when ChatGPT and these tools got released, it was kind of a natural for us to go and start covering these things and expand our business model to cover AI. But at the same time, what had happened was about 12 years ago, I got certified in AI from MIT, and I could finally now really understand what was going on and really put these things to work, got beyond just machine learning and really focusing on generative AI and how that's going to change the world. And so that's why I wrote the book, and I wrote the first edition, and that was the bestseller, and now the second edition is out, and that's doing well. And here we are talking today.
Rajeev, in 400 episodes of this podcast, we've actually only dedicated, I think, 2 or 3 solely to the topic of AI. And sometimes this topic can be quite daunting for a lot of people, including me as the host. So one of the reasons why I'm so excited to have you on today is because I think you can actually take fairly complex concepts and communicate them, teach them in a way that anyone and everyone can understand, at least a working knowledge to know kind of where is that puck going. What I like about your book, AI Made Simple, is you are updating this as fast as you need to. This is your second edition in the year. It's just been re-released with new information. You speak on this book frequently to companies, associations, and events. I recently had the benefit of actually hearing you speak at a conference in Los Angeles, and you said 8 or 10 things that I thought were quite frankly profound. I'm actually going to use my notes from that audience participation to drive today's interview. And fairly episodically, I'm not going to build in a certain order because I think it's interesting for different level listeners at different levels in companies to have their own, itch scratched, so to speak. One thing you said was that data is the new gold. I'd like you to start there and riff on that because obviously generative intelligence, machine learning, and AI is really about maximizing and leveraging the data you have in many ways. Talk about what it means for company leaders to understand the value of the quality of their data in order to leverage this new technology.
Yeah, look, that's a great question to start with. So look, in order to be successful with AI, whether it's machine learning AI, and machine learning AI is what we do, what we surround ourselves with all the time. So Netflix, Amazon, that's all machine learning, right? That's Netflix. You watch this show, we recommend this show. So Netflix is learning our habits. Amazon, you bought this book, we recommend this book. You bought this product, we recommend that product. So machine learning AI is when it's learning on our inputs and our habits. So it needs our data. We have to provide data to those companies for it to provide that offering and that solution. So that's where you can start to see the real value of data. So that's from a consumer perspective. From there, then you had generative AI, which is completely different. We'll get at that in a minute. But the reason why data is the new gold, or in many cases I even call it data is the new oil, is because you cannot be successful in AI unless you really understand your first party data. So you don't have to be a Netflix or an Amazon. It could be anybody. It could be anybody listening. You can have a small business. It could be in any industry. I can tell you that the more you understand your data, the data you collect about your customers, about your company, about your suppliers, about your operations, the more you collect that data, the more you can take that data and now go stick it in a repository and be able to go collect now have it pull that data, have it tell you a story. That's what's going to be important in the future. So if you think about it this way, we'll use data as an oil example as opposed to gold for just this part, is that you're sitting on an oil well of data. What's missing is the refinery sitting on top of that oil, on that oil field. So you need the refinery to convert that into something. So what's going to happen in the future is that you and your employees and your teams, you must become amazing storytellers of that data. And quite frankly, there's also going to be a revenue opportunity with your data. If you've got really good command on your data, guess what? All these big LLMs, the ChatGPTs, the Anthropics, the Google Geminis of the world, guess what? They're going to have to come in at some point and license your data. And guess what? That's 95% gross margin. May not be a ton of money, but hey, for small companies, but for big, large companies, especially media companies, think about Franklin Covey. Like right now, we could go use ChatGPT to do anything we want with using Franklin Covey's information that's out publicly on the internet. But of course, you want to be able to license that data. So take your first-party data, license it to ChatGPT, to these things, and you're going to get great revenue at really, really, really high gross margin. So that's why it becomes so important, because the more you can take your data, distinguish what you're doing, and separate yourself from the competition, the more successful you'll be in the future.
Rajeev, I'm not convinced that a lot of companies know what questions they should be asking themselves, like what kind of data do I need? And quite frankly, in the company, where do I find it? And how do I access it? And how do I leverage it? To what extent do you counsel C-suite leaders or sales leaders or CMOs, for that matter, on systems they may be in need of developing to aggregate their data and to tease it out? And what kind of questions should they even be looking at in terms of the data they have.
Yeah, look, so here's the thing. Understanding your data is kind of a CapEx, intensive solution, right? So you have to, if you're a CEO, if you're in the C-suite, you're CIO, CTO, if you're the CIO, CTO, now's the time to pound the table to convince your CEO, your marketing, CMO, that they have to allow you to invest in the data warehouse, into the data lake, into data management solutions, and because you want to be able to organize all this amazing data that the team is creating, the sales team's creating, the marketing team's creating, you want to be able to organize that data. So first and foremost is you got to be able to convince them. They have to own that strategy down. Like one of the things I talked about at that conference you're at is that this has to be a strategy in the business, and it has to start at the CEO. It has to be driven down hard into the organization. This can't be a, hey, let me just go figure out how to, I need to learn how to tweet. Let me go get an intern to teach me how to tweet. No, this has to be the CEO has to drive this down into the organization and spend the money, give the CIO, give the CTO the money they need to go build out everything from an infrastructure perspective, number one. Number two is make sure they have the right partnerships in place, whether, I don't know, maybe it's working with the Databricks of the world, whoever they might be. Maybe it's an SAP or a Microsoft, whoever it might be, working with them to be able to understand how your data is currently set up. But then more importantly, working with your marketing teams now to go say, all right, now that we have this data, how can we tell that story around that data? How can we now go pull that data? What's that data telling us? Because what's the point of having the data if it doesn't tell you something? And it's just about that whole concept, right? You know it. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. All I'm simply arguing is that this is just a better way for you to pull the data so you can measure it better, so you can manage it better. And it's going to allow you to have a leg up on everybody else if you do it right.
Rajeev, reinforce the point about the role that the C-suite, if you will, or the equivalent in any company, needs to build their acumen, their curiosity, their knowledge around AI. I can't imagine there's a executive team leader in the world now that doesn't need to daily be updating their knowledge around AI. Just kind of reinforce the imperative that leaders need to invest time into learning some every day on this.
Yeah, look, there's 5 key takeaways that leaders listening into this podcast need to take away. Number one, okay? Number one is you just got to start. If you don't know anything about this space, and even if you think you know a little bit, just continue to be curious. If you're worried about it from a business perspective, just start using it for your own personal and family perspective. It's a great tool to help you be a coach or help you train you how to run a marathon, whatever it is you want to use it for. It's a great support system for that even. Okay? It's a great travel agent to help you plan a trip. If you want to just start to be curious. So you have to be curious. Don't be judgmental about the tool. That's takeaway number one. Number two is what we just talked about. Data, 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 data. Data's new oil, data's new gold. You need your data. Period, end of story. If you don't have your data, you're going to fail. Number three is don't focus on the term artificial intelligence. I want people on this call to focus on augmenting intelligence because it's a tool. I want you to, because think about Excel, Word, PowerPoint, when those things got released, they're tools. These are tools. It just happens to be a really, really smart tool. By the way, the tool today has a high school level of education. And in the next 12 to 18 months, it's going to have a PhD level of education. So imagine having a PhD by your side for 20 bucks a day. Oh, sorry, 20 bucks a month. That's amazing to me to have that. So that's number three. And if you do that, Scott, CEOs and C-suites can do the one thing money can't do, which is buy time. A 6-hour task might take 6 minutes. A 6-minute task might take 60 seconds. So use it to buy time. And if you do it right, it will buy time. It'll make you much more efficient in your business. And finally, I can't predict the future. I don't know what's going to happen. This thing could just become a giant bubble and blow up and be egg on my face and everybody else's face. And it could be a giant, you know what, right? But I will, I am going to bet on the fact that this is not going to be an option, that people and companies that don't use AI, you will be replaced by people and companies that do use AI. So you have a choice. You can blow this off or you can get replaced. And if you do, you're going to get replaced. Or you can embrace it and go take on your competition.
See, that's a subtle difference in a lot of what I've heard is, I think most pundits talk about the number of jobs that will be displaced or eliminated because of AI. And of course, there'll be some of those. Welcome to, innovation and technology implementation. What you're saying is less so that people are going to lose their jobs because of AI. Of course, there'll be some of that, but more it's the people who are using AI are the ones that will be hired and promoted and elevated versus those who are not. So everyone, regardless of their level, should be spending some measured amount of time, almost daily, practicing, testing, failing, educating themselves on augmented intelligence, as you call it.
Yeah. And look, on the job thing, look, we're going through an industrial revolution or an age of enlightenment period around AI right now. Okay. We don't even know what new companies are going to be created. Think about the mobile revolution. Did we ever think all these app companies were going to get created when Steve Jobs created the iPhone and the App Store? No. Did we think there was going to be an Uber or an Airbnb 10, 12, 15 years ago? No. So think about all the companies that have been created in the last few years. Did we think there's going to be a ChatGPT or an OpenAI a few years ago, right? No. And, Google is still relatively young, right? It's a less than 20-year-old company. And so think about all the companies that have been created over the last, 12, 5, 10, 12, 15, 20 years. We don't even know what those new companies are going to be. Right now, what I do know is there's close to 9,000 startups globally, all around the AI space. There's going to be breakouts. So you're going to see job loss, but you're going to also see job gain in other industries and brand new industries, brand new companies that we haven't even seen yet. What's going to happen, though, is that in the past, maybe the company needed, 50 employees. Well, now it might need only 35 employees. That's going to be a little bit of the difference, right? In terms of these new companies. And as a matter of fact, I guarantee you, there will be somewhere in the world, there will be a 1 or 2 person company running $1 billion business.
Rajeev, I want to save some of the downsides to the end of our conversation, but I'd like you to educate our listeners and viewers on some of the must-need-to-know ideas around generative AI. Your book is, I think, a great starting point. I think everyone listening to this podcast should pick up softcover. You can read it in an hour and a half, AI Made Simple. What are some of the misnomers or misconceptions or just sort of level set ideas people need to know to begin to have a working knowledge around how they could use AI in their business, in their life? Start anywhere, go everywhere.
Yeah, look, so number one, keep in mind, it's not a silver bullet. It's not a silver bullet for your business. It's still an infant, it's still learning, still young, and over time, it's just going to get better. It's not going to become Skynet. It's not going to become Terminator robots. It's not going to come and take over and all those kinds of things. Those kinds of things are just not going to happen. Okay, so and it does make mistakes. It's not infallible, so it's going to make mistakes. So you have to just double check the work. Right. So those are some things there, right? It's not a creativity and judgment replacement. You still have to have your own spin on things. You still have to use your own self-judgment, what you think is best. You still have to understand emotion because it doesn't understand those kinds of things. Right? So in the process, what it can do is can help you with foundation. So if you're a marketer, if you're a salesperson, use it to create your Instagram post. Use it to help you think about, hey, I'm going to do this podcast. Use it to help you come up with your strategy and your vision. But use that as a foundation. Now you take that information and now you go put your own spin on it using your own experiences, your own, everything that you've embraced in your life, what got you to the level where you are. Do those things. And use the best of both worlds. Scott, that's the key here, right? It's taking your own human experiences and marrying it to the AI experience. And the people that can figure out how to do that, who can tell that story, they're the ones who are going to separate themselves from the pack.
You mentioned there are about 9,000 AI startups in the US. That was 2 weeks ago, so I'm guessing it's increasing by then. It seems like the technology is accelerating at a pace even I can't keep up with it. For example, yesterday, I was sitting in a client's office in Los Angeles. I live in Salt Lake City. And prior to meeting this client for the first time, I was just doing some research on her at the last minute, sitting in the lobby. And I went in to find her on Facebook and LinkedIn, and fairly high-profile person. Does not have a LinkedIn or Facebook profile. But I put it in, and I'm guessing it was ChatGPT or AI immediately came up with a whole narrative around her entire business, her history, her academic background. She doesn't even have a profile on those sites, and they were feeding me almost like a modern-day wiki overview of this person. I don't think that function was in those social platforms a week or two ago. If it was, I wasn't experiencing it. It seems like the evolution of change makes Moore's Law seem like an old concept. It is accelerating with enormous speed in terms of its sophistication and usefulness daily.
Yeah, I mean, look, the funny thing is I did something similar yesterday. I was working with, I had a board meeting yesterday, and one of my board members also not on LinkedIn, whatever, right? Same as this lady. And we put it in there, And 10 seconds, it gave a full detailed history of this person, because it wasn't about that what he put, what his inputs were to the internet. It's what others had inputted about him that he didn't realize. So, for example, he was on a couple of old advisory boards and those things, and so those things all kind of came up, and it talked about where he went to school. He did his MBA from Brown, and so there's information out there about people, and no one is completely off the grid. So I was able to pull all that stuff out. And you're right. A couple months ago, maybe it wouldn't have been able to do that, but it is improving. But on the Moore's Law front, right? Remember, Moore's Law is a process thing, right? So if you think about Moore's Law, if you think about how smart this tech is, it's all about processing speed and being able to process the inputs and do the outputs. So right now, okay, it might be here in terms of the ability to process, but because of Moore's Law, by 2030, our laptops, phones, everything are going to be 10 trillion times smarter. It's going to be more powerful than the human brain. And in 100 years, it's going to be 1 quadrillion times smarter. So you can just think about all that processing, about what it can do, Scott. I mean, we're going to be living in a world where there's going to be no disease. We're going to be living in a world where we have connected cars and buildings and people, and just being able to solve issues around climate change. And so it's just, to me, I'm just so super excited about the future holds.
Let's talk about some of the caveats and the watch outs. You're not a fear monger, but you're also not naive at all. At this conference I attended where you spoke, you could hear a pin drop because everybody was taking copious notes. You said something that was profound. You said, the end of truth is real. It's interesting, a few weeks ago on another podcast that I host for Franklin Covey called C-Suite Conversations, I was interviewing the Chief Learning Officer of Microsoft. And I asked him what was the skill that future Microsoft employees needed to learn the most. And of everything, it wasn't coding, it wasn't AI, it wasn't anything STEM related, it wasn't even interpersonal communication skills. He said, the key skill you're going to need to thrive at Microsoft, what he really meant anywhere, was the judgment, the discernment to tell the difference between fact and fiction, to tell truth from lies. He said the same exact thing that you said. I quote you, the end of truth is real. Riff on that.
Look, I mean, as I said a few minutes ago, right, it's that creativity, judgment, replacement. And in terms of the end of truth, look, there's nothing, I mean nothing, stopping anybody from taking your voice, my voice, Ty, Brandon's, whomever's voice, family, friends, kids, nothing, your parents, grandparents, there's nothing stopping taking their image, their voice, and having them say and do things that they never said and did. I mean, right now, the internet's starting to get flooded. Twitter is starting to get flooded with place of things where you see pictures and videos of Taylor Swift doing and saying things she never did, or of high school girls doing and saying things that they never did. There was right now deep fakes hitting all over because of the campaign, deep fakes against Biden and Trump. So, it's coming. So the ability to discern that information is going to be critical. I mean, to me, and I'm not here to be hyperbolic, but to me, this deepfake issue and this end of truth issue needs to become somewhat regulated. Governments and companies around the world have to come together. This could be the greatest impact to society since the development of nuclear weapons. And if we have the IAEA, we need to have the International Artificial Intelligence, the IAIA, basically is what we need to have. And so, look, I will pound this table that this is going to be, unless these companies, the Apples, the ChatGPTs, the Microsoft, the Metas, the governments of the world, the Googles, they all come together and really take this seriously. Because, man, I'm telling you, there's still not going to be anybody. There's not going to be, in the next couple of years, there's not going to be anything to stop anybody from taking your face, your image, your voice, and creating a Franklin Covey podcast, and have you start saying really bad things about Franklin Covey, and you won't be able to stop it. And that would be bad news for everybody.
I was calling my mother a few nights ago because I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal about the proliferation of predatory scams on the elderly. Everything from, robocalls from Africa impersonating their grandson's voice saying, I've been in an accident, send money, or whatever it is, right? I mean, it's exponentiating the billions and billions of dollars that are being scammed out of unsuspecting elders.
So I've got you. So since we've got since the primary audience here is learning officers and HR people and those things, those positions, I would like everybody to do a small favor. I'd like for you to quickly put the podcast on pause, and I want you to go Google CFO Hong Kong deepfake. CFO Hong Kong deepfake. Go do that, and then come back and listen to the rest of the podcast, and your mind will be blown what happened in Hong Kong.
So let's stop there a moment. You asked everyone to just take a moment, put on pause, and Google CFO Hong Kong deepfake. And for those who have done that or are going to do that, pick this back up and remind those who can't do that for whatever situation what they're going to find.
So I think earlier this year, a finance worker at a company in Hong Kong got a Zoom invite to their email. And they said, okay, got a Zoom invite. So they took the invite, they added to the calendar, time for the call, they clicked on the Zoom link, they go to this call, and on this call was the CFO, a couple of other people that the finance worker knew, looked like them, sounded like them, moved like them, acted like them, the whole 9 yards. And here's the thing. Everybody on that call, with the exception of the finance worker, was fake, was a deep fake. So somebody somewhere, whether they're in Russia or China or God knows where they were, they created a deep fake of this person's boss and some of their peers. They do this Zoom call, looks and sounds like just like their boss, and the boss says, hey, we've just entered into a new relationship with XYZ company. Please wire them $25 million. The finance worker over time starts to wire the $25 million. At some point, they get to the $25 million mark when the finance worker says something's weird going on here. Went to go talk to the CFO in person or did whatever they did, and you can read the article, what happened exactly. And sure enough, they got scammed out of $25 million, all because of the deepfake mimic of the CFO and the other people on the call.
You and I share in common that we're parents of teenage kids and college-bound kids. What are you teaching with your wife? What are you teaching your kids about the future of this technology? Obviously, you are an evangelist. You are an advocate of how to harness it and leverage it and use it for business intelligence and for profit and for good. But we know that this will go, with massive cyber risks and whitewashing, all kinds of things. What are you teaching your kids about this? Because there's going to come a time when you have young kids that are going to have pictures of them in compromising positions and sexting and self-nudes and all kinds of things that parents, it's our worst nightmare. It's just snowballing. What are you teaching your kids in terms of good judgment, not reactivity, all of that?
Yeah, look, I have two boys, they're a little bit older now. So Sean is 23 and Nick, they'll be 21 here in a couple months. And, they thankfully kind of missed the kind of the social media craze. And when they were in high school, they kind of were a little bit ahead of it. But look, we talk a lot about vigilance. We talk a lot about making sure that they're protecting that their information, that they are really being conscious of what they're posting online, that they're, one of the things I tell a lot of people is create a Google alert for your name. So, for me, I have a Google alert for Rajeev Kapur, and you should have a Google alert for, Scott Miller. Now, granted, the problem is that in India, there's 5 million Rajeev Kapurs, and I'm sure in the US, there's probably 5 million Scott Millers. So, but the point of it is you still want to have some sort of thing. Maybe you can do, so I'll do a Rajeev Kapur 1105, or you can do Scott Miller, Franklin Covey, however you want to do it. But find ways to protect your identity, be really conscious of what you're posting online, come up with a family safe word just in case. So we kind of have one. And so, those are just some small little things you want to do, keep an eye on your identity, make sure you have, your credit reports, all that stuff protected, just all those things, other than that, really, there's really not much you can do. But that's where the big companies have to really get involved. That's where the YouTubes and the Twitters of the world and the Metas of the world have to, TikToks have to really take responsibility to really also help police this stuff. And it becomes really important. I don't like spending money on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all these things, but I don't really use Twitter at all. But on Instagram, I went and paid for that blue check mark because I felt like I had to protect myself, because I post a lot of what I do, like these talks. I'll post about this podcast, etc. And I wanted to have that blue check mark so people knew it was really me. It wasn't some fake account someone created. And if they did, now there's at least a recourse. I can say, no, I'm really that person. So look, in the future, I'm sure somebody's sitting there, and if you're a company listening and you're in you're in the cyberspace, man, I'll tell you, if anything, really, really, really focus on this issue and really help companies and people as an individual really protect their identities.
Well, I'll tell you, after listening to you in Los Angeles and having read your book now, AI Made Simple, and today's podcast, I think people like me are especially vulnerable. Like you, I've written multiple books. I've written 7 books. I've written hundreds of LinkedIn articles and hundreds of Inc.com columns. I have 600 podcast radio episodes. I mean, you could put an entire speech together if you just gathered all the audio and all the video of me. You could create a social media account or write a book from what I've written. I think it's people that are in the public domain, whether they're leaders, celebrities, authors, opinion leaders. Not that I have any competence around it, but I'm pretty broadly out there. I think it's very likely you're going to see a book, an article, a column, a newsletter, a podcast, something from me that's not from me, because there's so much of me, I say that mindful, out there to work with. What does someone like me do that it's only a matter of time before there is a book published by me, that someone has aggregated all of my experience in words and writing, and I can't control it, I can't stop it, I can't warn, I can't do anything?
No, I just did it. So I'm getting ready to launch my book about you any minute here. No, I'm joking. Look, there's really not much you can do. I mean, look, you gotta be vigilant. Start Google yourself on a regular basis. Set up that Google alert, like I talked about.
Yeah.
Be careful what you're posting and how you're posting. Look, but at the same time, you can't run your life by fear.
That's right.
I mean, look, there's a reason. Look, I think eventually this will get solved, or it'll get solved to a level that'll make it a bit more comfortable for everybody. But like I said, it's going to take some big brains, people at a much higher pay grade than you and I. And I'd love to be in the room when it happened. I can tell you that I actually spent some time at the White House back late last year, and I can tell you that they're taking this really seriously as well. They have thousands of people in all the alphabet agencies who are really monitoring these things, and they really understand the potential challenge and issue it can create. I mean, imagine all of a sudden there's a debate tomorrow night. There's going to be election's already craziness, right? So imagine what's going to be like over the next 90 to 120 days. There's going to be deep fakes of Biden and deep fakes of Trump doing and saying stuff that they probably didn't even say and do. And so we'll see what happens. But you got to be careful and vigilant, and just protect yourself. And look, I just want that for everybody. Everybody should be out there protecting themselves, because you work so hard to do it. And and look, if you want to Google something else, there's a high school principal. You can Google a high school principal got suspended a couple of months ago from the school because there was a deep fake video created of him saying the N-word. But here's the thing: he never said it, and he got suspended, and his family got ridiculed, and it was just so bad, and it destroyed his reputation. And he's like, he was just so sad, upset. Like, he never said these things. He loves these kids, and see what happens. But so the police got involved. And the police called in the FBI, Scott, and the FBI went and they were able to trace it back to the PE teacher. And the PE teacher got reprimanded by the principal, and the PE teacher was angry. So the PE teacher created a deep fake of the principal saying the N-word and doing things and saying bad things about African American students and their competence, and it was just bad. And but it's out there, so now he's fine. I mean, he's not fine mentally or anything like that, but man, imagine what it can do to your reputation. So
that is
just crazy.
Yeah, that is both repugnant and reprehensible. And interesting that a PE teacher would have the knowledge to do that. Who would have thought?
Well, it's easy to do. It's not that they need the knowledge. You can just ask ChatGPT how to do it, right? I mean, look, first of all, ChatGPT is not hard to use. It's easy to use. Because it's easy to use, it's also easy to do bad things with it too.
Right.
Right. And so it's also easy to do amazing, great things with it. So you just have to watch out for yourself. And I hate to scare people with this, but that's the major negative of this whole thing. But I think that'll get solved as well over time. I think that's the good news. But to me right now, there's so many amazing. Look, we're going to be living in a world with no disease. People who are blind are going to be able to see. People who are deaf are going to be able to hear. People who are paraplegic, quadriplegic at some point in the future will be able to walk again, right? People who have Alzheimer's, they'll be cured for Alzheimer's. There'll be cures for cancers. There'll be all these things over the next 10, 15, 20 years. We're going to be living longer. We're going to be living a more efficient and wonderful life. Those are all the amazing, beautiful things that are becoming for us. But there's also going to be some challenges and some scary stuff, just like there is with everything. And you've got to be vigilant.
Beautifully said. Rajeev Kapur, your book is AI Made Simple, A Beginner's Guide to Generative Intelligence, updated second edition. I think I'd like to have you as a recurring guest, because my sense is you will be updating this book, if not in print, digitally, fairly frequently to make sure it's competitive. So I'd love to have you on a couple times a year for the coming years, just to keep the conversation relevant, especially given how close you are to so many businesses that are implementing and harnessing their data. Rajeev, thank you for joining us today. Appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you.
And we'll see you back here next week for a new conversation on leadership.